Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Talkin Kop. I'm Gav, this is Ashley, and this is a transfer special for Liverpool Football Club, as it looks like they're closing in on the signing of Jeremie Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen. Multiple reports yesterday and in particular today suggest that Liverpool are going to spend in the region of £30 million on this player as a replacement for Trent. I don't know, but definitely another right back slash right wing back slash right winger slash whatever we want them to do. And that looks like it's going to happen. Paul Joyce has spoken on it, so you can probably expect it to be announced in about 48 hours. But actually, we've done a couple of transfer shows in the last couple of weeks. We done one last night, and we were talking about the right back position, and Frimpong was the name that yourself and Kev were talking about. But this looks like it could be Liverpool's first, and I say first because I think there's going to be a few signing of the summer. Are you happy with this one? Does this one excite you?
Yeah, I don't think he's like for like at all. So in terms of the passing range of Trent and things like that, I don't think that that's what we're getting. But in terms of an elite wingback that could potentially be a fullback and that we could mold into, I think he's got all the raw talents there. He's 24 years old. So, he's not a baby. He's not someone that you're going to have to nurse into this team. He's someone that can plug and play right away. He's just, in terms of what he does well, he is elite in what he does. I don't think that if you compare him to Trent, you're going to get the same numbers. But if you look at what he's able to do on the ball, in the box, going forward, especially in the attacking part of the field, I think he really is very exciting for us.
We're going to look at some stats, both attacking and defensive, in a little bit. But you know, somebody says there, Ali says the Dutch connection.
Yep.
That's a big thing. We've Gravenberch, we have Van Dijk, we have Gakpo in the squad at the moment, and this is another player coming in that will know these players. Like you said, you won't have to nurse him into a squad, and he's coming in as he's not an unknown, and this squad, a fair few of them, are not unknown to him. He started out life at Man City. He's played at Celtic, so he knows the English slash British game. So that's an advantage as well. But this one looks like these rumours started about 6 months ago, and they haven't gone away. So it doesn't feel to me like it's a knee jerk from Liverpool and went, okay, we need a right back. We really like Bradley. Can we get someone else in here and just throw someone at it? It looks like there's some talk on into this, and that's usually what Liverpool do. Sometimes too much talk, where they think a lot and then nothing happens and everyone gets upset.
I'm excited about getting him in early. If we can get this over the line, you've got that release clause, so you just activate that. For me, that's exciting given the fact that there's no European football going on. We know that he plays in a different system than what we play in. And the idea of him getting a full preseason under slot with the Dutch lads around him who know him really well, I think that helps mitigate the fact that he does play in a different system now. I think that gives him time to train with the squad, to train under slot, for him to really teach him what he wants. He's still very young and very moldable. And we've seen kind of an evolution of what he's been able to do, whether it was through Celtic, whether it was over at Leverkusen. I think that he still has the ability to continue to grow his game. I think you saw it with Trent, where he was asking Slot to help him improve defensively, and we have seen that. And I think that the same thing could go and apply to Frimpong, where I think Slot has the ability and the tactics and the coaching ability to help him in that realm. And I don't think that he's as bad as people say he is. I think it's just the system he plays in skews the numbers, so it's very much going forward that he shines.
Money wise, we've heard so much over the last, particularly probably 6 to 8 weeks, especially around the verge of Van Dijk and the Mo Salah contract renewals, that both were coming out saying that this is where I want to be. We're going to have a big summer. And they're not signing those contracts without getting some sort of, promises, I suppose, or with regards to what Liverpool are going to do. But when you lose a player of Trent's ability, and let's listen, Trent is a very kind of Marmite situation at the minute. You either love him or hate him at the minute. But what you're losing in a footballing sense, taking away all the other stuff, is massive. It's you look at him, and I don't think he's as bad defensively as people make out. But going forward, not even going forward, his ability to put Liverpool on the front foot and then supply is probably is second to none, I think, in world football. And it would have been easy for Liverpool to go and go, okay, what's the best right back in the world? That isn't Trent Alexander-Arnold, and throwing a lot of money at it. This looks like it's a £30 million buyout of Frimpong's contract. It's something where I feel we're bringing in a really good established player at a really good age, and like you said, you can turn him into whatever you feel you need to turn him into, but you're not breaking the bank here on 30 million quid. It's clever at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was the one that engineered that release clause into his contract, anyways. So he knew that there were bigger steps, and I think you've seen that in talking, like in the way that he speaks, that he knew that he was ready to move away from City because he wanted to get that starting place, and then you saw him go to Celtic, and then eventually, he's progressed to where he is. He seems like a very confident person, and you hear him speak, and his personality is infectious, which I think is also quite nice for the squad. He speaks English. I mean, he's homegrown, which is huge. I think when you're looking at that price tag and you're thinking about the homegrown quota, like there's really, it just seems like a no-brainer there for me. He is definitely different, like I said, from Trent. You're never going to replace Trent. He's a unicorn. He's generational, and I think that that's not thrown around lightly. And I'm not just saying that from a Liverpool fan perspective. In terms of that quarterback role that he plays, he is generational, and that's not what we would be getting from Frimpong. It would be different. But if you look at his numbers and you look at his stats, if you're comparing him apples to apples in terms of what he's good at, which is essentially a hybrid, or not a hybrid role, but it's as close to Andy Robertson as I can think of in terms of a comparison that would make sense to everyone, in terms of that engine, that flying, up and down the flank, that's creating the crosses from out wide with a little bit more end product, actually a lot more end product than Andy Robertson. I think that that's what we're getting. We're getting sort of a younger Andy Robertson on the other side that has more end product than an Andy Robertson. And I think if you look at the way that Slot has tried to use Robertson this year, where he's overlapping with Gakpo and there's that little interchange on the left wing, I think you could see that on the right wing. And I think it could really help Mo out in terms of that overload that, is over on the right in terms of players that are double teaming Mo. It would give teams another person to think about that is an actual threat on that side.
Just on the stats side of things, if we go in here and we kind of look at, this is his performance in an attacking sort of way, right? So as you can see there, all the percentiles for his position, I presume this is, and you look and you see he's high in the passes, key passes. He's really high on crosses. He's really high on big chances created. There's a lot to like about that. And you look and the one that stands out to me is non-penalty XG 100% dribbles and dribbling ending with fouls, dribble efficiency. They're all really, really high, and that's not something you put down to Trent and even Bradley, because Trent will not be a Liverpool player in a couple of weeks. When you put it to Bradley isn't a dribbler of a football. I think he's an athlete that looks to get in, break space and do damage from there. But he ranks really high here for his position and in an attacking sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about 28 goals over the course of the last two seasons. So you've got 5 goals and 9 assists this season and 14 goals and 12 assists last season when they won the Bundesliga. There's a lot of people that are comparing him to a winger because his numbers read more like a winger than they do a fullback or a wingback in this case. And this is comparing against fullbacks in Europe in terms of all of the big leagues. He definitely has so much going forward. And I think there's a lot of people that have talked about him as sort of a Swiss Army knife on that right side, where he can play anywhere on that right side, where, you've got obviously the replacement for Bradley on the games that Bradley doesn't play, but could you potentially see him taking some minutes off of Mo when he's perhaps at the AFCON? I'm not sure, but in terms of having that flexibility, we've talked about it in the past about what we would like to see the club doing going forward. And I think that versatility is something that definitely strikes a chord for me in terms of what I like to see.
An interesting an interesting question there from somebody who asks, is Brian O'Sullivan a bot? Or am I missing something? Is there an inside joke, says Jack? No, Brian and Faster Tortoise.
Brian and Dylan.
Yeah, well, Brian and
right now.
Yeah, Brian and Faster Tortoise are having a game of who's better at satire, and they're both losing. They're both awful at it. But listen, keep trying. God loves a trier and all. If you believe in God, if you don't believe in God, you're just a trier, and maybe everybody loves you. I don't know. Attacking wise, we've seen all this, and the way just sticking on the attacking for a little minute before we go to the defensive side of it. Does this make Liverpool make the pitch bigger again by him wanting to be really wide and looking to be that guy that's bombing up and down all day? I don't see a lot of him inverting into this kind of playmaker role. Does he suit Liverpool for you in the sense that if he's going to be running beyond Salah or get running inside Salah, a bit like Bradley does, that gives more opportunity for Salah to dictate a game from out on that inside left is the kind of position I like, because Trent would often stand back from Salah and go, listen, if it doesn't happen for you, give it back to me and we'll go from there. This feels like it's much more of a direct approach, and I'm not talking about long balls for him to run onto. I mean a much more direct approach in the sense that we're going to try run over teams rather than be extra creative in little triangles and stuff like that. This feels like it's going to be, you're going to need to keep up with this guy because he's going to keep going and going and going.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like a Ferrari in terms of pace. If you look at his numbers, he really is way out above the others in terms of his sprint speed and the number of times that he runs up and down that wing. I do think it'll help Salah. I mean, I think about some of the games where Salah looked so isolated on that right side where, you had multiple teams double or triple teaming him. And because we didn't necessarily have the outlet on the left, they completely nullified all of the threat that Salah possessed. And I think that having this overlapping runner there who also possesses a threat themselves just naturally means that they're going to have to split that double team. I think in terms of the left side, he has a fantastic cross on him. I think we'll talk about that in the ability to kind of provide to that left from kind of the more traditional, like I said, Andy Robertson angle where you're running up all the way down almost to the end line and then crossing it in. I think he's very good at that as well. I just think from an attacking perspective, he's a no-brainer. I think from a defensive perspective, there might have to be a little bit of a rejig. There might be a balance that happens. I don't know if that means Gravenberch drops deep into almost like a 3 at the back when we're playing against teams that, when he's pushing forward. I'm not sure. I don't know if that means that the new fullback that we're recruiting on the left is a little bit more defensive minded, which reads not Kirkez to me, which reads maybe more of a Hato. So I think that's something that's interesting that we could probably discuss going forward. But again, just looking at this pizza chart in the attacking perspective, I think that he has so much going for him and he's so exciting. And I'm really excited to have him join.
Okay. Defensive wise, this is what we're looking at. Yeah. And there's a lot of lower numbers here with regards to but final third involvement, he's really, really high. Carry, he's really, really high. Ball retention is quite low. But I presume that's because he's trying to dribble by a load of people in the position he was playing with Leverkusen. Shot volume is really high. Shot quality, dribbling again, crossing is quite high. Creating, I don't know how you measure creating, but he's kind of in a halfway house there. Aerial duels, 55 percentile, and he's not the biggest guy in the world, so what can we expect there? But is there anything in that worries you? Because let's be honest, there's quite a few people out there going, yeah, he's rapid, he's a threat going forward, but can he defend? Because we have this like
I think
huge thing
I
about
think the
fullback
question
star.
that we need to ask ourselves is who are we playing against 90 to 80%, 80 to 90% of the time? And against these low blocks, we don't necessarily need all of this defensive cover. We've got two fantastic starting center backs. You know, hopefully Konate gets sorted over the summer. I think that's very important. But I think in terms of who we're playing against for the majority of the season, in terms of unlocking that low block, he works. But I think what happens is Bradley becomes your more defensive-minded player. And if you do need someone that has the stronger metrics, whether it's in defensive work rate, recoveries, tackling, things like that, I think that you go for Bradley. I think for the other teams, you go for Frimpong. And that's where you create this kind of push and pull, horses for courses. I don't necessarily think that he's the one that you're going to play if you're going to be absorbing a lot of pressure. So, I mean, in that PSG game that we played where we were just soaking up pressure for 90 minutes, I'm not sure if he's the answer there. But, you know, if you're trying to break down like a Southampton, which we found very difficult this year, I think he is your guy.
It is interesting because, you know, a few people in the chat there are going, Jesus Christ, are we sure this guy is a defender? Just looking at their stats and stuff like that. Darren
Honestly,
says,
no.
yeah, and Darren's a couple of people have written in here. He said, Darren says, I don't see how we go for Kerkers on the other side now. We would be far too open defensively. Konate's going to need new hamstrings after playing with this lad for 5 games, says Jus. You know, there's a lot there, but when you watch, like you said, when you watch Liverpool for the vast majority of games, you know, and it is the vast majority of games, teams aren't interested. You know, they aren't interested in pushing your fullbacks back. They want you to come forward, and they hope to get a ball forward, and their big man can get a head on it and stuff like that. And like, let's be fair, like, you know, if you watch Bradley, for instance, and Tsimikas and Robertson, yeah, they're good going forward, but it's very rare I've kind of said, Jesus, they're miles out of position when Liverpool are being broken on. You know, it's more, geez, he's made a mess of that trying to intercept that, or he's made a mess of that touching the box. I've never kind of went, he has been left wide open here. With regards to position, you know, we seem to get back really well, and we've players in midfield that get back really well. So for me, I feel like there's an awful lot being made of, you know, he flies forward. Will he ever come back? Yeah, of course he's going to come back. Do you know what I mean? If he's playing the back four, he is going to. And like I said, Arne Slot and Richard Hughes or whoever's involved in this recruitment aren't just going to sign a fullback and go, listen, this fella just doesn't defend. You know, what we're going to do is we're going to play football now, and we're just going to have no defender on the right. You know, it's interesting though, the Kerkez thing, because I think the two of them do like to go forward, but I don't think Bournemouth go out and dominate the football against, you know, the vast majority of teams in this league. I think Bournemouth have kind of set themselves on being defensively solid enough. He just seems to be really good on the break for me, Kerkez. When he gets a chance to go, he's really effective. You know, Kerkez would have done loads of defending. And listen, it all depends what Arne Slot asks him to do. Does he ask him to do loads of defending, or does he instruct them, you have to go and we look after the rest, you know? And I've seen him, I was talking to a few people today, and they were like, they feel like you may see Liverpool slightly switch to kind of two lads in the middle of midfield to counteract it if they went with this fullback stuff. But it's all about options, you know, it's all about options. And for me, if you bring in Kerkez and you bring in Frimpong to go with Bradley, and you go with Robertson, I think you have options there that, depending on what game you want to play, you can say, right, we're going to play that fullback and that one. They can switch around the following week, or they can mix and match as they go along. I just think for the amount of money that we're putting on this guy, I think it's a really, really sound deal. Bob Paddock is naming teams. Lovely. Here we go. Alisson, Kerkez, Virgil, Konate, Frimpong, McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, Wirtz, Diaz, Salah. Just quickly before we go, you know, most people seem happy with Frimpong.
Yeah.
They feel like Kerkez may be next, and Liverpool are going to have this big summer, and I think it'll be about 4 players they bring in. Florian Wirtz isn't happening, is it? Not for that money quoted, it's not.
I can create a scenario in my head where it makes sense. And the scenario where that makes sense is that Isaac has decided that he's not going to leave Newcastle, so we're not going to spunk the money on Isaac. And then you also have a scenario where maybe they had allocated 50 to Huijsen, and now that he's going to go to Real Madrid, here you have this kind of combination of cash that you might have decided to allocate elsewhere that now has become available, and you might see an opportunity inverts. And we've seen it before. We saw it with Szoboszlai. The team did not know Szoboszlai was available until they dealt with them. I believe it was for the loan of who was it? I can't remember off the top of my head. There was a loan that we did for Carvalho. That's who it was. We were dealing with them for a loan for Carvalho, and they opened up the door for Szoboszlai, and the team was like, oh, okay, like we're going to move on him immediately because we didn't know he was available. And they have done it in the past. So the fact that maybe the door is open because Bayern might not be able to raise the funds, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think that you would be talking about buying him maybe as a false 9, maybe as a creative 10, and I think you'd probably not get your number 9 that you'd be looking for this season. And maybe they've scouted the market and they've said, we don't see a number 9 that's available for us. We're going to go for this option and try to get goals from elsewhere, because we've done it for the whole season. We won the league without a striker. If you add Florian Wirtz to what we already have, which is essentially no striker, you're just improving the team.
So the money on Wirtz I've seen is 100, north of 100 million, right?
Yeah, it's bonkers. It's game-changing money, though.
Yeah, but the talk going around is that Bayer Leverkusen have put this number on to try scare off Bayern Munich, and I don't think that really happens, to be fair. I think if Bayern Munich wants someone, they usually get them. But Just says, and I kind of agree with this, he says, Wirtz is going to Bayern. Let's not torture ourselves here. His agent is his dad, doing the same run around as Haaland did. The German national team love their players playing in Germany. I think that's such a good point. And listen, and Tony says, I'm all in on Wirtz. Fuck it. I'm not far behind you. I'm just saying, you know, if the rumour is true that he's gone, that he was at the AXA as well as Man City and looking around, I think Liverpool are probably going, yeah, the money's fine. You know, we're trying to convince him. But that Wirtz one feels like it could rumble on for ages, and I'm not in the humour of it. I'm really not. I'm just not in the humour of it. You know, I'm all for Liverpool.
The window hasn't even opened, and you're already tired of it.
Yeah. I just, you know, like, oh, we're trying to sign a striker. Yeah, but what about this fella? And for fucks. And this just goes on and on and on. And then it just ends up. What happens is the longer it goes on, the more people get hopes up. And Liverpool are probably off trying to sign someone else, and then it's just, it just doesn't do it for me. It'd be 80 million euros, says Limping Monkey. Oh, well, that's interesting, because if it's 80 million euros, it's 72-ish million pounds, which is around, as like someone said earlier, it's around the Nunez money.
I do not think you're getting him for that cheap.
I'm not too sure. You know, are they putting that colossal money on to say to Bayern, no, and try hold on to him for another year? I'm not too sure, but the Wirtz one,
you have to remember, they're 1 and 2 in the Bundesliga right now. That would be like us selling to Arsenal or vice versa, and that's not something that we would like to do or they would like to do. So ideally, they would rather sell him over here. It's whether or not he agrees to that project and whether or not he agrees to the future there. I think the interesting thing with Bayern is, where's he going to play? Is he going to play where Musiala is playing? Is he going to play alongside him? What's the plan there? With City, is he going to replace Jack Grealish? Is he going to play where Phil Foden is? They've already kind of had that type of mold of player, and you've seen Guardiola just stomp out all the creativity and just turn them into robots. In terms of keeping him and his sort of creative genius going and growing, I actually think that we would be a decent option in terms of like allowing him to flourish. I think that we aren't a natural fit. We don't play with a 10 right now, but I think that we've seen hints of it, especially in that City and Newcastle game where you had, I think it was Szoboszlai and Jones that were playing those two aggressive 8s. I could see him playing there. I could see him taking over from Diaz in that false 9. I see possibilities, and if Slot feels like he can mold it into something, I'm excited about that prospect. And FSG has talked about, we will stump up the cash for game changers, and he is a game changer. So I don't know. Until it's absolutely scratched off, I'm not gonna kill it yet.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna live in the land of hope.
I'm not against. Listen, I'm not against Florian Wirtz being a Liverpool player. I just think if Florian Wirtz is going to move this summer, just do it in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but and then we can all just get on with it.
Yeah.
I just feel like that could be a saga. Just says 100 million for a German club, 150 million for other clubs. Supposedly, if true, he's destined for Bayern, like it's planned. Yeah, it may be so. And Bayern did try to take Jonathan Tah last summer, didn't he, from Leverkusen, and it didn't happen. He'd probably go there on a free. I think he's on a free.
I think they're planning on that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's about it. I'm suppose hopefully with the fact that Paul Joyce is giving it the big one about Jeremie Frimpong, that this will be announced in the next 24 to 48 hours. And if it is, we get some more people on to talk about Jeremie Frimpong. It won't be me and it won't be Ashley. We've said enough. Someone else can do the heavy lifting on Jeremie Frimpong. That's about it. We're off because we have to clear the way for the lads to do their show over on Patreon, which starts in about 2 minutes' time, and we're probably late. That has been the talk.
We're not late. We're right on time.
Nah, we're not, because by the time we get this done and then I have a smoke, we're going to be late. But anyway, that has been the Talkin Kop, all about Jeremie Frimpong, a little bit about that guy Wirtz that's going to drag on for the whole summer. We'll talk to you in a bit. Over and out.